Hello everybody and welcome to the very first Digital Doorstep interview series. Tonight we'll be joined by Brendan Young very shortly. Brendan is standing in the Celbridge local elections and will be looking for your #1 vote on May the 24th. So just a little rundown to let you know the format of the interview this evening. I can see that a few people are already joining us to watch, and thanks very much. Brendan will be with us shortly. So firstly, my name is Trasa. I'm an admin of the Celbridge Politics Facebook group, so some of you may know me already from the group. If you're one of the many people who have joined us in the last week or two, you're very welcome and thanks for joining. So the reason we decided to run this event is that, as you probably know, there is no hustings or no event debate hosted in a hotel or whatever in Celbridge for these local elections. But a lot of people were looking to get a better feel for the candidates and learn a little bit about their platform and why they're suitable for the job, and also answer perhaps some questions that are pertinent to people locally, just different issues that are in the area. And so we decided to set this up and facilitate an interview with each of the candidates. So we'll be interviewing 7 of them every night this week and next Monday and Tuesday as well. So keep tuning in if you want to see the different candidates. So with that, I'm going to bring Brendan Young into the interview now. Brendan will join me split screen, but just to let you know, we may drop audio for about 20 to 30 seconds while Brendan is joining us. So if you could bear with me, he'll be with us any second. Thanks. Hi, Brendan. How are you?
I think we're there. I'm good.
Good, good. Audio's perfect, visual's perfect. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Yes. Night out on the canvas. It was very positive. I'm feeling good about it all.
Good, good. I'm delighted. So look, we'll get straight to it. To explain for people watching at home, the format will be that I'll ask Brendan to introduce himself and his platform, and then I'll ask some questions. The first question will be common to all of the candidates that we interview this week, and the rest of them will be a little bit tailored. The candidates have seen the questions rather, before these interviews. The purpose is just to let you get to know them and hear their answers. And please ask your questions in the comments below. Hit that like button, tell your candidate that you're supporting them, ask your questions, because the candidates have all committed to answering as many questions as they can that are on local issues after the video is shared, which will be just after we finished going live. So without further ado, Brendan, could you please introduce yourself to people?
Well, people may have seen my face around the place. I'm Brendan Young. I'm what you might call an activist public representative. I'm not a career politician in that sense. I was elected to the council in 2014 on foot of campaigning against the household tax and the water charge. I think that real change comes from people power, people organising, discussing, making decisions themselves, democratic decisions, both local and national level, and then mobilising and using their own power to affect change. I've a fair amount of background experience in that. Just if people are interested in, does he know what he's doing? I was out of the country for 20 odd years since the mid 70s, came back in 2000 to look after the parents like many people do, and immediately dropped into activity. I was involved in bringing the Women on Waves boat to Dublin in 2000. That was quite hectic. And then in the X case referendum, I was an organizer during that. It's always been my view that women should have the right to control their own bodies, the right to continue or end a pregnancy as fits their own circumstances. And that referendum was about whether or not the risk to life from suicide should remain grounds for abortion, and unfortunately we won that. Subsequent to that, I was quite centrally involved in the campaign, the referendum about the EU Constitution, and I did a lot of work on the provisions in the treaty that help to privatise or commercialise public services, in particular health, education, water services. The examples in Britain are rather bad, and I drafted the main pamphlet on that. subsequent to that, I worked in a couple of TD's offices, Claire Daly, Joan Collins, and worked on the first, you might call it the first abortion bill that Claire Daly tabled, and then worked quite centrally in the referendum campaign. The lead up to the referendum campaign, did a public meeting in Selbridge 2016 on repeal. So in terms of the capacity to look at policy, analyze policy and prepare stuff, quite competent with that. Anybody who saw the European Constitution was a telephone book. And I keep my feet on the ground by working with people. You can have votes in the council and they sometimes affect things, but often don't. And it may be the same, could be said at all level, but certainly it's really the impact of people mobilizing that changes things. And I think the water charges campaign was an illustrator of that. So that's my general approach to politics and to work. And I'm very open to working with like-minded people. It's possible to get on where there are disagreements, but often there are fundamental disagreements that we just have a different political approach. Broadly speaking, I'm in favor of, as the poster said, tax the rich. I believe in people paying according to their ability to pay. That was one of the big issues with the water charge. Ability to pay doesn't come into it. And it's come up on the doorstep in relation to what's effectively the home tax or property tax. It doesn't relate at all to ability to pay. So that's a central issue. And it will come up again in relation to the property tax in the future. So there we go.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. Well, look, we'll move swiftly onwards to the common question. And again, for anybody watching, this question will be asked of all of the candidates that we're interviewing. So Brendan, it often appeared that the municipal district councillors were at cross purposes with one another, and that Kildare County Council places many obstacles in the way of securing infrastructural and other funding for Selbridge. Is this a fair assessment in your view? What approaches will you take to fostering a more cohesive working environment among the councillors and with Kildare County Council officials? What will you do to maximise the share of funding that gets directed to Selbridge?
Well, people have different sort of political or philosophical starting points. So it's not a given that everybody is going to have the same view on how things should be done. For example, I had a different view to some of the councillors on whether or not there should be a big development at Confey during the discussion on the local area plan, because it seemed to me given that there would be a major road going through St. Catherine's Park. But we did work quite well together. We worked together on drafting a submission to the Bus Connects proposals. I did quite a lot of the drafting on that, and then we circulated leaflets around that people could make submissions from. We also worked together in campaigning for the North Kildare swimming pool to go at the amenity centre in Leixlip. And we did a joint submission, and then I did an additional one in relation to the recent strategic housing development called Oakley at Shackleton Road, Old Town Road. So there is the possibility of working together. The council works to its own remit sometimes and is broadly controlled by ministerial direction and ministerial rules. Most local politicians will actually run up against those. So it quite quickly can move from an issue of attempting to put local pressure or get local infrastructure. It runs up against budgetary rules. So for example, we're all in favour of much better bus services, and we want them now. We want them yesterday and last week. And clearly, looking at what's happening, those services aren't there. Dublin Bus come out to us and they say, well, we will put on the services, but the NTA won't give us the money. They won't give us the buses. So then it's up to the NTA, but the NTA is governed or directed by the Transport Minister and effectively the government. So there may be a difference there.
We're going to move on to a question on transport. Yeah, we're going
Yes,
to
in
move
a
on to a
moment.
question on transport in a moment for sure. But in terms of maximising the share of funding that gets directed to Celbridge, I had a post up on the page yesterday, which actually got a lot more traction than I thought, regarding the local property tax allocations. How does it work that we can secure more funding? Because there's a lot of need for a lot of infrastructure, a lot of services. Can you, I know this question is unscheduled, as it were, or unplanned, but what do we do to make sure we get the maximum amount that we can when we're competing, obviously, with towns like Naas, etc., for funding?
Well, most of the funding decisions are by the NTA, the key, well, the infrastructural ones. So things even like funding for cycle paths, funding for buses, funding for road improvements are NTA decisions. And we all agreed when we were preparing the local area plan that there should be a local transport plan and a transport access plan prepared by the council within a year of the approval of the local area plan. Now, that hasn't happened. And it appears that the council officials don't admit this, but it appears that they are underfunded and understaffed. And when you look at their staffing figures and the staffing ratios for the council in relation to the population, we feature one up from the bottom. So there's clearly a shortage of staff there because the funding procedures now are competitive. So there's an agreement to develop a public realm plan, but there's competitive bidding for that. And we've allocated money from the local area, or from the local property tax, to fund staff to prepare bids. It seems to me to be a very irrational way to proceed, but yet that's the way to proceed. That's the way that it's structured. So what I think people can do is actually, in relation to transport, is if there are problems and complaints, to constantly email, not simply put stuff up on a Facebook page, which I think is a good idea. Sharing is a very good idea. But email the TDs and the minister and the NTA, make sure the complaints get in, be that broken record. Because if they don't hear it, they think, well, you know, there's a few complaints here and there, but it's not a big deal. The second thing is to press for increased funding for the council. It's something of a scandal, the underfunding. For example, building control, which inspects all the building designs and the buildings as they are built, and there are 60 live sites, big building sites in Kildare. There are only 2 staff do all of that, 2 staff. So they only look at a sample of 15%. That's what they've got to cover. That's what they're essentially directed to cover. So, you know, we need more staff in the council in order to function efficiently. And then I think in particular in relation to transport, there will be another consultation on the Bus Connects proposals in September, October. We will put in submissions, but I will do public information events for a lot of people to put in submissions. Mass pressure is really what's needed. If it's ones and twos doing it, you know, or if it's a small number of councillors doing it, the NTA people think, oh yes, grand, we'll log that. But if there's mass pressure, it changes the dynamic, and I think that's really the only way to do it. We put in proposals. The council has passed several motions of mine to call on the minister to guarantee funding. You know, so that's the mechanism through the council. This is guarantee funding for the DART to come to Celbridge in 2023 and for more carriages in 2021, because they say, oh, we're getting more, but we haven't decided where they're going to be deployed. So it really needs to be visible to the powers that be, to the NTA and to the minister, that it's not going to be a quiet area that we can, you know, hive off and leave down the road.
So do you think, okay, do you think petitions or individuals sending emails, for example, and making phone calls, which is more effective? A petition is easier to organise than individual emails and phone calls, for example. What's the best mechanism to get an urgent focus on it?
Well, having worked in a couple of TD's offices, if you get a petition in, you know that 1 or 2 people were competent and capable and went out and did it, and that's good. But if you get 50 emails, you know there's an issue. You know that 50 people are sufficiently angry, sufficiently motivated, and sufficiently organized to go out and do that. So it's better to get emails. It's even better again to get a physical letter, the piece of paper arriving in there. If there are lots of pieces of paper arrive in, even if it's a similar text, but it's better if it's slightly different text, that has an impact. If a TD gets 20 letters, they know there's an issue. If they get 20 emails, well, okay, but that's the direct contact, and letters and phone calls register. But we probably need to look at, and maybe discuss it with the community council, but we probably need to look at the idea of a public transport forum or such like for Celbridge and North Kildare, because Celbridge won't get it alone. The Bus Connects thing integrates Celbridge with Leixlip and there are good proposals for orbital services, but a forum that would put together proposals where there is agreement, and there's probably quite a lot of agreement, and that can maybe mobilize, and at least mobilize a phone and letter campaign in pursuit of stuff would be a reasonable way to proceed, I think.
Okay, thanks for that fairly comprehensive answer. Let's move on to water. Celbridge's water infrastructure has been a source of real difficulty in recent times, and reliability is badly needed. Like many, you oppose the reintroduction of water charges, but some people would not object to a charge if it guaranteed a safe and reliable supply. In the absence of water charges, what would you suggest is done by Kildare County Council to fund the necessary improvement to our water infrastructure? What are your views on the role and performance of Irish Water?
Well, let's start with the role and performance of Irish Water. It's not great, and that's an understatement. To go back a little bit, the Kildare County Council has no funding role in water supply. Kildare County Council is now the contracted organisation by Irish Water to do repairs, particularly on stormwater, but also on main supplies. That contract was due to go to, I think, 2024 or 26. I can't remember the precise dates, but Irish Water wished to bring back the date at which the contract to Kildare County Council will cease to 2021. This will actually worsen the service. I'll give you an example of this. Some years back, when was it? Was it 2010? There was a big freeze. It was one year there was a big freeze.
Yeah.
In Donegal, there were pipes burst. There were water services were lost. But they were back up in 2 days because the crews who were doing the repairs and maintenance, they know the network, they're experienced, they know where the problems are. But in Derry, just across the border, it was 8 days before the services were returned because the whole thing is contracted out to a contractor coming from anywhere. And they don't know the geographical and physical lie of the land, so to speak, and they haven't got experiences with the strong and the weak sections of the network. What sections of the network are closer to the surface and therefore more likely to freeze? So Kildare County Council no longer being the contractor for Irish Water in the maintenance of Celbridge's water supply will not be a good thing. As to supplies to Celbridge, Irish Water are installing a new 300mm pipe to come from roughly up near the Salesians roundabout to down towards the Clane Road. And this is an alternative or backup supply in the event that the 300mm main pipe that comes through Castletown Domain does a dog leg and then comes out under Celbridge Main Street. They say that it's likely to fail again, that either of them are likely to fail again, and they're not going to embark on repairs until there's a failure, because it's a big job, especially under the main street. It would be a very disruptive job. So they're not going to dig up the main street unless there's need, but they are providing an alternative supply, except for part of Castletown Estate. I was talking to them, and I've written to them and met them when a delegation came to the council about 2 weeks ago to ask what parts of Castletown Estate will not be on the alternative supply, and what arrangements will be put in place to ensure that people who are not on the alternative supply will have supplies during the period when the other main is being repaired. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'll pursue it. Like it's
Okay,
get
so
back here
like,
shortly. So there is an alternative supply being brought in, which will, I'm reasonably confident, end the series of major failures of the last couple of years.
okay.
That's work in progress, and that should be installed over the summer. As to funding of it, really it should come out of Central Exchequer funds. Water is, since 1998, 2% of VAT and 6% of road tax goes to fund water. They're talking now about an excess use charge. Approximately 7% of households waste or use a lot of water. I've worked in the plumbing trades. If there's a leak under a building, or a leak under a field, or a leak into a supply, you can go around with a listening rod and you identify it. You identify leaks by what are called district meters. The district meter measures how much water goes into a certain number of houses, and you can project the use.
I just want to bring us back to the funding of it, if I may. Just in terms of the funding of it. So you mentioned there, you know, the sources of funding from the Central Exchequer, for example. Would it be fair to say that that's not going to change, let's say, in the medium term? That, you know, we will still be relying on an under-budgeted, underfunded, and to use your own view, an ill-prepared contractor to perform the repairs. Is that where it's at really at the moment?
On the basis of what's going on, that it looks like it.
Okay.
I mean, I would say funding is available. That there's really a lot of money. The top 300 people now have financial assets in excess of 100 billion euros. That's up 12 billion on 2 years ago. A 2% levy on that would pull you in 2 billion a year. So it's possible
on a national level.
On a national level, the money is there. You know, there are a lot of people on very high incomes who could pay a small, you know, 2-3% more on wages between 100,000 and 2 million, of which there are around 20,000 people. You know, it's possible to bring in more money if the government was of a mind to do so. Yeah.
Okay. I have to keep us moving because we are running, excuse me, long on time, and Facebook will eventually cut us off. So to our final question. Before I get there, I just want to mention that we have had in the comments from Michael a question on the environment, from Lulu a question on puppy farms, from Charlotte a question on climate change, from Fergus a query on bus connects, and from Ray Fred Price a question on the rates, the contributions made by developers' rates, or the fees that developers pay into our coffers. So just to give you a recap of the kind of questions that I'm seeing coming in here on the screen, and plenty more as well. They're just the ones that I was able to jot down as we were speaking. Thanks everybody for the questions. Keep them coming, just stick them in the comments, because poor Brendan's going to be on his phone all night answering them, if with any bit of luck at all, or over the next couple of days at least. If you can get to as many as you can, Brendan, it'd be great.
I will indeed, yeah. I get them all.
Thank you. So the final question, and it's one of your favourite subjects, and as a Selbridge person, one of my least favourite subjects, because I know how contentious it is. You have called for a major public housing programme with high quality, affordable housing that is integrated with public transport, local services and facilities for young people. Many would agree with you, but they also feel that Selbridge is at capacity in terms of traffic volumes arising from our growth rate. Regarding the Oakley Manor, Old Town Road, Shackleton Road situation, you have said that An Bord Pleanála's rejection of councillors' submission is unacceptable and that you will keep pushing it. Is it time for a rethink here? What is the fundamental problem behind An Bord Pleanála ignoring our councillors' concerns? And is this being addressed? So I'm talking about the root issue here. What can you do strategically as our team of councillors to ensure more sustainable future housing development?
Well, this is the biggie because it relates both to transport, public transport, and it relates to climate change. They are all integrated, and they need to be approached in an integrated way. Bluntly, it appears that at present, on the experience of the Oakley strategic housing development that went through Bord Pleanála and was signed off on April the 12th, that both the local area plan, which had a requirement for a transport plan before anything happened, that was swept aside. The roads department of the council objected to the development on roads issues, and that was overruled by the council executive. And the views of the councillors that there should be public transport, that flood risk issues needed to be seriously addressed, and that the lack of community facilities needed to be addressed, they were all also essentially ignored. As to how we may deal with this, there are two more proposals coming up. I looked at the inspector's report, and I think there were 6 submissions to Bord Pleanála in relation to that. One was mine, there were 5 others. People should put in submissions. The inspectors should be made aware that there are concerns and that it's not going to be plain sailing. I think there's a case for possibly lobbies, mass lobbies of Bord Pleanála, but the overarching approach is for small packages of development, 200 to 400 units, because that suits the developer. They build a certain number, sell those, use the money from those to finance the next phase, etc. And it's not an integrated approach. So there's a pushback to be done at government level. I'm trying to popularize the idea of more higher density, rather more urban form developments, urban street type developments. The model I work from is an area called Vauban near Freiburg in Germany, where there are maybe 2,000 units, now nearly 5,000 people living there. But there's a central public transport route. The car traffic goes from out either side, and it's a very low carbon, low car use development because it's linked directly into public transport. And I think the best location for further development in Selbridge would be between the Dublin Road at Ballyulster, all the way up parallel to the Loughlinstown Road to Hazelhatch Station, because there's sufficient land there to have a new development that would be the Dublin side of the Hazelhatch Road and wouldn't come to the bottlenecks at the bridge, and you'd have public transport at the top and the bottom.
I hear you. I'm just going to come in there because a question popped up on my screen, and forgive me, whoever it was, Declan O'Brien, thanks for your question. Declan has come in on this subject just to say, well, if we're overruled every time, then, you know, isn't it a futile exercise? You know, what can we do with our representation? His question has gone off my screen now, so I'm paraphrasing, but you know, if these valid concerns, and for example, a superior route and a superior plan that you've suggested there isn't listened to, then what can we do? What can the team of councillors get together and do something, for example, to correct it?
Well, I think we're at an early stage in these. This is the first one in Selbridge.
Okay.
So we shouldn't say there's nothing we can do. I think what we need is to try to get more public participation, more people participating. The last one came on us in a great rush. We now have a bit more time, but the difficulty is that the structure of it puts the initiative in the hands of the developer. So, for example, the 2 new proposals coming for Crowdown, one was put back to the developer to reconsider, look at the the planning rules, etc. But we don't actually know because we can't see the documents. The second proposal will have an opinion from the board on June 19th. But once again, we don't see the documents. Nobody sees the documents or the plans publicly until a full application is submitted, and then we don't have much time. So I think it's a matter of watching for when this stuff comes out, meeting up, discussing the stuff, informing people, and preparing submissions, including submissions to the planning department of the council, so that the council doesn't simply give the nod to it in the same way as the inspector.
And just wave it straight through. Understood.
Yes.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay, Brendan, thank you for answering my questions. I know I went around about a little bit on a couple of them.
I thought it was very good.
Well, thanks. I'd just like to touch on there have been some common themes in the comments, but a new subject has come up from Karen, who is looking to understand why the traveller accommodation budget for last year has not yet been spent, and is there any way that it can be guaranteed that it will be spent this year? I'm not going to ask you to answer that now, but just to be aware the question is there. A lot of the themes coming up in the questions.
That's a problem across the county. That is a real problem. The money is there and it hasn't been drawn down.
Okay, well let's get at it then in the comments after the video is shared. So I just want to say, whether you're watching this live tonight, and there are a lot of people watching this live, the audience is bigger than I anticipated. Thank you very much for coming along. Thanks for the support, for hitting like, for asking questions. It means a lot. This is the first time Cellbridge Politics has done anything like this, and it's great to have the bit of support. It doesn't stop here. The comments are there. Conversations can happen. Let's keep engaged. And Brendan, I'd like to thank you, as I mentioned in an email to you and the other candidates. Thank you for taking the risk with me of coming on live and addressing Cellbridge in a new way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I think you've a radio career in front of you.
Yeah. We'll see.
Well done.
Thanks,
well done.
Thanks very much.
Well done. You've done really well. Thanks.
Thanks a million. And thanks everybody. I'm going to end it here and share it live for the replay shortly. Cheers.